すみません、ロシもう一度言っていただけますか。
はい。したがって、私がお話しさせていただきますのは、仏の方でもありません。
This Dharma, accordingly, this Dharma that I'm talking about is not the Dharma that belongs to the Buddha.
また、善というものでもありません。
And this Dharma that I'm talking about is not something called Zen.
岩木や曹洞宗でも臨済宗でも、あるいはいろんな仏教の宗派がありますけれども、全くそういうものに関係ない法そのものの話をいたします。
This Dharma that I talk about has nothing to do with the Soto sect or the Rinzai sect or any other sect or denomination of Buddhism. What I am talking about is the Dharma itself.
法の話でもない、法の話、仏の法でもありません。また、善というものでもありません。こう言っとるんです。ここのところが理解できていただけてるでしょうか。
This, the Dharma that he's talking about is not something, it's not the Buddha's Dharma, and it's not something that's called Zen. This point that he's trying to make here, do you understand what the point is here?
ですから、説教老師は、曹洞宗でも臨済宗でもありませんし、宗派の話でもありません。関係ない。法そのものの話はそういうことですとこうおっしゃってる。
The Sensei Roshi, Harada Sensei Roshi is pointing out that the Dharma is not something that belongs to the Soto sect or the Rinzai sect or some other Zen sect. It's the Dharma itself, the Dharma exactly as it is.
はい。2500年前の法がインドから中国に五大ダルマが伝えたわけです。
As you know, 2,500 years ago, Bodhidharma transmitted the Dharma from India to China.
その法が日本にみんなよくご存知のように伝えられたんです。
And as you are aware of, the Dharma was transmitted from India to China and from China to Japan.
インドの文化あるいは環境、さまざまな条件、ちょっと待ってよ。条件によって育った方が全く違った中国と日本というは
古いやつだな。
という。
それ古いやつだ。こっちで。ここ。インドの。
インドの文化あるいは、環境その他さまざまな条件のもとに育った方がまた全く違った中国日本と伝わってきたことは注目に値することです。
The Dharma transmitted from India to China and then from China to Japan. And it's worth noting that the Dharma, with its roots in India, nurtured in Indian culture and background and circumstances, was conveyed to China first before it was transmitted to Japan.
もしインドあるいは中国あるいは日本その国その国のものでしかない法というようなものであったらそれが間違えています。
And whether we talk about Indian or Chinese or Japanese or any other country, if the Dharma were dependent upon characteristics or attributes particular attributes from any particular or specific country or culture. If it were dependent upon such things, it really wouldn't be the true Dharma.
しかも、驚くべきことは、その国の文化とか思想、あるいは学問、あるいは人間の条件、あるいは環境というようなものを全く邪魔にせず、相手にせずして育ってまいりました。
The Dharma, the pure Dharma itself, has been transmitted from one country to another, and it has been transmitted unaffected by that country's, the other country's culture or ideology or education or customs. It's completely unaffected by these things, although it has been nurtured inside each of one of these cultures.
しかも今日まで、今現在まで全くそのものが間違いなく伝わってきておるということです。
And moreover, the true Dharma, as it is, the Dharma as it is, has been transmitted uninterrupted down to the present day.
今ここにお集まりの皆様もそれぞれの考え方、あるいはそれぞれの方が皆一人一人違っておりますけれども、この法というものの上においては全く等しいということです。
And all of the people here, gathered here today, each one of us is different in their own unique way, own unique and particular way. But at the same time, in regard to what we call the Dharma, all of us are exactly the same. All of us are exactly equal.
なぜならば、正しいこととか、あるいは間違いであるというようなことが、ダルマにはないということです。
The reason why all of us are, you say, equal or the same is that in regard with the Dharma, there is no true or false. There is no right or wrong.
あるいは、それを信じるとか、あるいは信じないということも全く関係ありません。
And the Dharma also has nothing to do at all with such things as believing or not believing. These things have no relevance to the Dharma whatsoever.
ここまでで皆さん、先ほどの質問と、法との関係、ご理解ができましたでしょうか。
What he's saying now, is this becoming a little more clear? Is it starting to make sense to you? Do you have a certain understanding of what he's talking about? If you have any questions, you can ask a question. I'll try to translate.
これは要するに、よそに求めてもどうにもなりません。今の事実のみですよということをおっしゃってるんです。
Another way of saying this is that the Dharma is your own present condition right now, just as it is. And it's, you say it's a mistake. It's not something that you seek outside your present reality as it is.
じゃあ次行ってみましょうか。
He'll continue with the talk.
残念なことに人間が認識によってその法を私する、自分のものにするということから間違いが生じるのです。
Unfortunately, it's due to man's ignorance or his cognition, because he tries to use the Dharma for his own ends, then misconceptions and misunderstanding arises.
その何故認識が起きたかということについて、これから少しずつお話をさせていただきたいと思います。
In this topic about cognition, he would like to mention a little bit now more in depth about how cognition arises.
私たちの子供の頃は認識というものを認めるということの考えがまだありません。
As a small child, as a very small child, the function of cognizance or the awareness or consciousness of self and other is non-existent, hasn't yet developed.
私たちの子供の頃は認識というものを認めるということの考えがまだありません。
And this capacity or ability or this function of being able to perceive things outside of the self has not yet taken shape, taken form.
しかし、だんだん大きくなるに従って、自他という自分と客観と主観という区別がはっきりしてまいります。
Then, as we are born and start to develop and grow, this distinction, which previously didn't exist, this distinction between self and other, between subject and object, we begin to perceive and foster and sustain this way of seeing things.
しかし、認識を起こしたということを知らずに、多くの人が今日までおるわけです。
But we're not aware of this arising of the perception of perceiving self and other. We unwittingly, we raised this perception or this cognition, and unaware to the present day, we've carried this misperception of self and other with us, and have lived with it, have lived by it throughout our lives up to the present.
事実とものの真相、事実と認識というものの相違が何かの縁に触れて、必ず人間には認められる時があります。認められる時があります。
That there can come a time when, due to some condition or circumstances, that a person is able to realize the difference between reality or the true form of things and his or her own perception of reality.
その距離が初めて自分自身で分かって迷いというものを生ずるのです。
We realize for the first time that this gap or this difference between our perception of reality and reality itself is the source of our confusion and delusion.
ここまでで、言葉の理解は、していただけたでしょうかね。
Are you able to understand what Roshi has been talking about?
Please unmute your microphone in Zen Center Athens. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
I think so. Give it a try.
Are you sure of it?
It's not real clear. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Can you hear me now? Can I more clearly, perhaps?
It's a little bit more clear.
All right.
Perhaps we can try.
Okay.
All right.
I read in Roshi's book that once the Dharma will moves, the material wheel moves.
Whoops. Let's see. Once the Dharma, say it
The
once more, please.
moves. Once the Dharma wheel moves,
Okay.
the material wheel moves.
Material world.
Material wheel, the wheel
Okay.
moves.
ちょっと待って。just wait a second, please. なんか、多分さっきロシの本の中に書いてますけども、法輪が転じるときは、the Dharma wheel once the Dharma wheel moves, then you say things move.
Yes, and that is also something that Dogen said, that we are supported from within, but once we move our Dharma wheel, we have to have faith that the material wheel will move too.
法輪が転じられたら、物事の、物事の、車というんですか、もう同時に転ずるんですと言われています。これは、道元禅師も言われているようです。Well, please go ahead.
So, but you said that there is no believing or not believing. There is no truth or false in following the Dharma.
でも、こっちに今話したのは信じても信じなくても、関係ないと言われています。
So, is it wrong to believe and follow with honesty, with honesty Dharma, and just believing that you will be supported?
だから最初はこういう信じて、それが信じたらその法というもなんてかなっていくという、ようなことは間違いでしょうか？それが法を信じて、それからそれを信じたもの、に頼っていくというですか、という頼っていくという、ことは間違いなんでしょうか？
はい、いえいえ、法というものは信じるとか信じないとかという以前のこの事実を法というんであって、ここで設計老師がおっしゃってるのは、まず信じたからある、信じないからないとかいうそういうものじゃなくて、今のこの事実がその法そのものなんだということをおっしゃってるんです。
The point that Sensei Roshi himself is making is the Dharma has nothing to do with believing or disbelieving, but it's your reality right now as it is, as it manifests, has nothing to do with believing or disbelieving. It is a fact, the reality itself.
ちょっと皆さんに聞いてみてください。
はい、
事実と認識、これはどっちが先だと思いますか？
He has a question for everybody. Reality or fact, reality and our cognition of reality, which arises first, he asks.
Reality.
事実は先です。
そうですね。そうしたら、事実が先なんだから、認識がその後だから、事実というのは自分とそのものとの距離がないことでしょ。
So it's true. It's right. The reality arises, manifests, and then our perception or our cognition of it arises. And so, so there's no gap between reality and our ごめんなさい。ローシ、もう一度言ってください。事実と認識と、
事実と認識、事実が先でしょ。
はい。
で、事実が先いうことを分かってらっしゃるから、
うん、
事実というのは、もう自分とそのものとの距離がなくなった様子ですからね。
うん、
事実というのと自分とはピタッと一つじゃないと事実ということにならないわけでしょ。
うん、
見たというたらもう見たというのはもう後のことだから、
うん、
もうパッと見たらそのまま事実なんだから、事実と一つになっとるから、一番どうあっても法というものはいつでもそうやって今の事実ということになっとるんです。なっとるんじゃなくて、そうあるんですからね。それをちょっとそれを説明してみてください。
はい。The issue here is reality as it arises, and then our cognition of it, which our cognition or perception of it, which arises afterwards. And reality itself, we are absolutely one with it. There's no gap between reality and ourselves as reality or things arise in the what do you say, the immediate present moment. But once our perception or cognition of reality arises, there's a gap, there's a space, there's a gap between, a distance between reality itself and our perception of it. And we have to become aware of this gap or difference between reality and our perception of it. In reality itself, we are always one with things just as they are.
OK ですか？はい。
Are you okay with that for now?
Reality insieme utilizzare le frasi di teoria perception. Τότε δεν την εκφράσεις. Είναι
何かおかしいことがあるの？
ちょっと聞こえなかったけど、まあ、笑っててごめんなさい。
いえいえ、何かおかしいことでもあるんかな？
そう。ジオさん、何か面白いことあったの？そこに。
ジオさん、英語で言った。
そうか。ジオさん、I'm sorry. There was a little bit of laughter there, and Roshi was wondering if there was something.
It's something between us.
そう。特に何もなかったみたい。
Was an example of this last point.
I see. なんか特に、はい、
ないね。はい。じゃあ、その次に行きますよ。
He'll continue.
その迷いというものに気がつかれた、それをブッダが生老病死と言われました。
The Buddha, becoming aware of this delusion and this suffering, called it the four sufferings of life, aging, sickness, and death.
根本的な迷いを生老病死とブッダは言っております。
And so our man's fundamental delusion or fundamental suffering is these four basic sufferings of birth, old age, sickness, and death.
この迷いと、いいですか？
はい。
この迷いというものを仏の教えだと4つの生老病死、人間がどんなにしても逃れることのできない大きな問題としております。
These four sufferings, four fundamental sufferings of man, are according to the Buddha, according to the teaching of Buddha, they're unavoidable, and they are the source. These four sufferings are the source of all of our distress and delusion.
それを分けて分析しますと、苦集滅道と言っております。
And these four basic delusions or sufferings, when broken down, investigated, they are divided into four elements. And these four elements are suffering, the cause of suffering, the elimination of suffering, and the great way.
苦の原因がいろんな煩悩が集まって苦しみを生みます。ですから、その煩悩がなくなれば苦しみがなくなるということです。
And the source of our suffering is due to greed and anger and ignorance. And if the passions or the delusions of greed, anger, and ignorance are eliminated, then our suffering also ceases, stops.
その煩悩をなくする道を仏の教え、すなわち仏道、あるいは仏教と呼んでいるんです。
The path or the way to free ourselves from these passions of greed, anger, and ignorance, this path is called the Buddha way. It's called Buddhism or the Buddha way.
この煩悩という言葉、どういう意味かわかりましょうか？
In Japanese, there's a word called bonno, and it's generally in English translated as the passions. Do you understand what bonno or the passions are or is?
これは煩悩とは身を、体を悩ますもの、あるいは心を悩ますものというのを煩悩と言っております。
Bonno, or you say the passions, are things which cause us a lot of cause us physical or mental suffering. And this is what the bonno, or you say the passions or delusion is. It's a difficult word to translate into one single English word. In bonno, it can mean the passions, it can mean delusion. It's translated in a couple different ways. But it's the source. This bonno, or you say that the passions or delusion, is something which is causes mental or physical discomfort or confusion, delusion.
先ほどの苦集滅道というのをさらっと言いましたけども、これ、それでよろしいですかね？
He's talking about the four elements of suffering, the cause of suffering, the elimination of suffering, and the great way. Are you familiar with these terms? Is there any need to go into this in more detail?
これは、苦集滅道というのは四正体のことですから、苦体、集体、滅体、動体ということです。で、この苦体というのはこの世は苦であるという真実。
These are the reality. The first one is the suffering. It's the what do you say? The fact or the reality that suffering does exist.
で、集体は、苦の原因が煩悩、妄想であるという真実。
And the second, it says the cause of suffering. The cause of suffering is due to our this bonno, delusion, or the passions, which are the cause of our suffering.
で、滅体は苦の原因の滅という真実。すなわち、無常の世を超え、執着を断って苦しみを減らすという意味です。
And the third, the suffering, cause of suffering, the third is the elimination of suffering. And the elimination of suffering is to eliminate our, say that the passions, is to give up our attachment to things. We eliminate the passion. We eliminate the passions by giving up our attachment to things.
動体は悟りに導く実践という真実。
And the fourth is the great way, which is the path to salvation, to our finding freedom, to awakening to the great way.
要するに、苦集滅道というこの死生体をちゃんとすれば、悟りの様子が自らが分かりますよという4つの言葉ですね。
And through these suffering, cause of suffering, elimination of suffering, and the great way, through our practice of these four four elements, then we are able to ourselves understand and to awaken to the great way.
ですから、その道を私どもが間違いなく歩いていけば、必ず煩悩が集まって苦しみになっておる、その苦が必ず滅する時があるということです。
Therefore, if we unfailingly walk this path or this way, without a doubt and without fail, our delusion and confusion, which is caused by the four sufferings, can be resolved, can be extinguished.
例えば死という最大の苦しみである死ということについてちょっと話しておきましょ
う。For example, death. He'll continue now to talk a little bit about death, which is the cause of the greatest suffering.
人が死ぬ間際、臨終と言いますが、まず第一は釈愛、物を惜しむ愛着の心が起こります。
It is said that when death approaches, when we are on our deathbed, at first we become regretful and start to cling to things. We don't want to give up our attachment to things.
財産とか名誉とか、あるいはその他いろいろな社会的なそれを過ぎると、社会的なこと、それを過ぎると、今度は本当に自体愛、自分だけを何とかして助かりたいという、そういうものが起こります。
We become attached to things like our property or wealth or things, formless things like our own prestige or honor or social standing. Next, as we are approaching death, following this attachment to things, then what follows after that is the attachment to ourselves, to our own bodies. This attachment to the self becomes very strong, and we want to be rescued or spared from death by any means whatsoever.
いよいよ最後になりますと、当生愛、今現在死んだらどうなるのか、どこへ行くんだろうかという、そういう最後の苦しみがやってきます。
Lastly, we have this great fear or a great suffering that if we die now, where will we go after death? And what happens when we die or after we die? And this is the final fear or the final suffering that arises.
今は生老病死の4つの根本的な負の死ということについてちょっと話をしたわけです。
And this is just a short explanation of the suffering of death, one of the four great sufferings, which the four great sufferings are birth, aging, old age or aging, sickness, and death.
座禅をすれば必ずそのような生老病死の死というものから下脱、解きほぐされるんです。
And by doing zazen, through zazen practice, it is possible, without a doubt, to free ourselves or to be liberated or disentangled from. Whoops! I lost my script. From the four sufferings. I lost my script.
目に見えない、目に見えない絆から解きほぐされることが必ずできるものです。
Things that we are unable to see for ourselves, these invisible sources of suffering, we're able to disentangle ourselves from these things.
そして私たち皆さんもそうですが、終わりがないというものが得られます。
And then once we free ourselves from these entangling shackles, without any doubt, it's impossible to be freed from these bonds or fetters, to untangle ourselves, relieve ourselves from the ensnarling shackles of death. Yes. はい。すいません。
はい。だから座禅をいたしましょうということです。
And this is a talk to encourage us all to do zazen, to be free from this suffering. We can attain the freedom of something that has no end, something that is unending.
じゃあここで質問をいただきましょう。
At this point, he'd like to take questions if anybody has something to ask.